everybody, this is the Rabid Hedgehog, and I'm just going to kind of take a look back and start a series on beginning riding and tips for the beginning rider, just getting into motorcycling and things like that. Things that, I definitely look for whenever I wanted to get into riding at first, when I want to get my own bike and everything, and just want to go over some things that may help the future rider. And as you can see, I've got two different kinds of bikes, two very different styles of riding. One is the Dual Sport, the KLR 650, designed to go anywhere you really want it to go. It's almost a giant dirt bike. And then obviously the street-orientated cruiser, the Harley Davidson 1200. And basically the reason why I've got two different kinds of bikes is I do kind of have two different riding styles, and also because of the area that I live in. It's just one of those things of knowing where you live, what you're going to do, and what's best for you and things like that. So that's why I've got the two. And the biggest thing is that when you're a beginning rider is, which bike do you get? Do you get the Dual Sport, the one that can go everywhere, that's smaller sometimes, like the Yamaha 250s or even Honda's little 250cc, even Yamaha or Kawasaki has one as well. Usually short seat height, not a lot of power, pretty decent bike. Or do you get the cruiser type? Do you get the beginning styles that are like 250cc, or do you move on to the big 1200s? What do you do? And it really depends on the rider. Part of the thing is that when you're buying a bike for the first time, get to know the bike. Do a lot of research on both of them. There's regrets that I have on the bikes that I bought, like the Ninja 300. Great bike overall. Didn't match my style. Didn't match the way I wanted to ride. The KLR is actually the same problem. It's a little too tall, a little underpowered for what I want it to do, and just some of the things that I've had to deal with it, in terms of the maintenance that comes with shaking it apart all the time. But that's nothing too terrible. I kind of knew that was going to happen going into getting a Dual Sport, that you'd be constantly doing stuff with it because you're going to be constantly shaking things loose. But it's just one of those things that it's not my style because I just don't have the time to continually do the maintenance on these motorcycles. And I like to do my own maintenance. That is one thing that I do enjoy doing for sure. So if I had the time, the KLR would be the great bike of that. I'd be able to take it out wherever I want it to go and trounce about and do stuff. But I'd have time to do the maintenance if that was a perfect world. The Harley is a little bit harder to maintain than most cruisers. There's just some different things about it. The maintenance schedule on it is not too bad. It's about every 4,000 miles. The KLR is about every 3,500. Except for the fact when you take it off road, then it's every time you take it off road, because you got to clean the chain, got to do this, got to relube, stuff like that. But when you look at it, as a first bike, find one that definitely you can grow into. Not one that you're going to outgrow quickly, but one you can grow into. One of the biggest mistakes bikers get into is they buy a bike that is too small to begin with. They get the 250, they get the 300, they get a small bike, and they outgrow it. They outgrow it pretty quick. They don't like the power anymore. It's not fast enough. It's one of those things. So I recommend buying a bike that isn't scary, that isn't too powerful, but one that you can grow into for sure. A lot of times a cruiser is easier to do that with because they're slower, they're lower, they're more confidence inspiring than, say, the sport bikes, that some of them are taller. Average cruiser height is like 27-inch seat, average sport bike height is like 30-inch seat. So it depends on the confidence that you have getting to the ground with your feet. So when you look around the bike, when you're going to go buy one, get familiar with it. Take a look at everything that's about it, and just looking at all the things it's going to do. Look at the maintenance and how it's going to be. Especially if you're a garage tinkerer. If you like to do a lot of maintenance and you got the time to do it, then great. A Harley Davidson would be real easy to get, but there's some other motorcycles like Kawasaki's Vulcan and other bikes like that are simpler to do. Like the Harley Davidson here, on its maintenance, up under here, you have where the oil goes, or oil drain plug is. You pull that down, you let it drain, and then you got to go up under here and to drain your primary. Got two different places to go. You have to take the whole primary cover off to actually change the oil and stuff inside of it. You have an inspection cover for the chain inside of it, that you have to make sure has the right tolerances on that chain. If it doesn't, then you got to remove this foot peg here, and there's an adjuster under there. Adjust that back up to the correct deal. So it's just one of those things. How much do you want to tinker with it? Whenever you buy the bike, do you want to do all that maintenance, or do you want to have one drain plug for everything? That's what the KLR has. One drain plug for everything. Transmission, engine share the same oil. Real simple to do. About a 5-6 minute oil change on that, literally. One place to put the oil at the same time, too. So, nothing major on that as well. Another thing is, like I said, riding style. And we'll kind of climb up on the Harley here. Whenever you're on these bikes, the biggest thing about confidence is, can you get both feet on the ground? And you can see that I got both of my feet firmly planted on the ground. And as a new rider, that is very confidence inspiring for you, is to be able to get both feet on the ground at the same time, especially excuse me, when you're on hills and things like that. You want to feel that confidence of being planted and having that ability to just sit there and hold that bike down. But there's times where you get that big hill. And one thing I do recommend, after you climb up on that, kind of get the feel of it. So, go back and forth, see how it handles between you, how far it goes over before it gets really heavy, things like that. And it seems kind of weird to do, but trust me, you want to know, because the big thing is, if you get on one of those really, really big hills, I'm a 1 foot stopper, so basically when I stop, I will have 1 foot sitting on the brake somewhat like this, if you can see that, and then I'll have the other foot down on the ground. Because when I'm on a hill, I'm using the back brake to hold the bike from rolling back on me. A lot of times people I see, they'll dig in like this, or they'll have their feet firmly planted against their pegs like this to hold that from going backwards. That's a lot of weight, and sometimes a lot of pain for some people. It's something that you need to think about when you're riding, because you don't want to use your legs as the stop gate for the bike rolling back down a hill. I mean, you weigh, in some cases, and on average, somewhere like 170 pounds or so, the average human weight. And the bike is going to weigh over 300 most of the time. The average bike these days is quite heavy. This one in itself is 590 pounds pretty much. That one is about 430 to 450, somewhere in there. So when you're on the bike, think about that. Can you 1 foot it? Can you go to a stop and hold it with 1 foot and hold that back brake and just sit there at a light and be comfortable with it? And the reason why I said back to forth, when you have wind, the bike actually does move. It's one of those things that as a new rider you might not expect, but when you're sitting at a stop sign or stoplight and there's pretty bad wind gusts, which today there has been, it's kind of calmed down, but earlier today we had gusts in 40 mile an hour range. So I was sitting at a stoplight and I'd just simply kind of drag over, and then I'd come back because the wind was catching it. So that's what I'm saying. Get kind of a feel of that back and forth, when you're on the bike with both feet planted. So that if it starts to go over and you need to, use that foot for a second to rebalance, that way you can catch it successfully at a point, bring it back to in line, and then get ready for your start, and you can go back like this. Just certain things like that. And I really recommend that to the new rider. Think about the weight of the bike, and it's one of those things that will slip your mind a lot of times, because you'll get on it doesn't feel as heavy, but there are going to be moments where that bike is heavy. Part of the appeal of a cruiser, when it comes down to being a beginner bike, or one that you look into, is because of the fact that you're sitting down really low and you got a bent knee and a firm foundation, and you can actually drag this thing around and move it. You can push it around and do all these things that you normally might have difficulty doing on a taller bike like the KLR, because you don't have as much leverage to the ground with the KLR. My legs are more straight down on that one. because it's a 35-inch seat height, and this one's a 25.2-inch seat height. So it's just things that you need to think about when you're buying it. Is what are you going to get into? Are you going to get into a bike that you think is great and you're going to ride it forever, but it turns out that, man, when I'm at a stoplight, I'm slipping back, I can't hold on to it, I can't one foot this bike, it's too heavy, but there's a huge puddle of oil right here that this car just left behind, I don't want to step in it. And, there's just things that you got to think about a little bit beyond just the coolness of the bike and things like that. You got to think of, the everyday ability of the bike. The next thing that I want to go with is features of the bike. What does it have that you can't live without? Some bikes, are carbureted, and if you're cold weather rider, like tomorrow we're supposed to be, right now it's 75-ish, tomorrow we're going to be 43, somewhere in there as the high. And the big thing is, can you live without fuel injection at that time? When it gets to be really, really cold in the morning, are you willing to come out a little early and pull the choke lever on it, start it up and let it warm up? Or do you want the convenience of just jumping on, firing it up, let it warm for maybe a couple of minutes to make sure that oil is flowing because it's going to be cold, and then taking off instead of trying to get it started, possibly flooding it, blah, 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 especially you new bike rider, not used to a carburetor, because most of the time you're in a truck that's fuel injected nowadays, you pop in, you start it, even on a cold day, it fires, and you're good to go. Bikes aren't like that. You're going to have cold weather days that the carbureted bike, like the KLR, isn't going to want to move. It's going to sit there and flood itself continuously, and you're going to get angry with it. Now, have I had that problem? No. I have not. I'm good at starting bikes with carburetors. I owned an 83 K5 Blazer. I understand carburetors. I know what happens, on a cold day. So I keep that problem to a minimum. I'm able to get that thing started and warmed up and everything, because we've had a couple of cool days since I've had that bike. But this bike is great for cold weather because, the best part about it, you got this windshield. You got wind protection. And that's another thing that you want to think about living without in the features. Does it have wind protection? There's fully fared sport bikes that offer great wind protection for the lower end of your body, but does it control your head? Are you sitting here catching wind and moving around like that, And that's one thing you need to also kind of think about. Do you want a full windshield that blocks that wind from hitting you? Do you want to sit out in the open? Are you comfortable with your head moving around a little bit, or do you have a strong enough neck muscle that you can stand straight and get going and not have a problem? Things like that. Another thing is can you live without, some of the touring package things that come on some bikes, like this bike here, the KLR, very minimal bike. Minimal controls. You can see that there's just a couple of gauges there, missing a fuel gauge, all this good stuff that, you're wanting on some of the modern bikes. Then you got this bike that doesn't have a fuel gauge but has a fuel light, tells you at least you're about to run out. And then you got bikes that have a full digital cluster. What do you want? Do you want a tachometer that's analog, or do you want one that's digital? Just think about the things that you like in preference, because when you're getting your first bike, you want the bike that you can enjoy for a long time. Like I said, find the bike that you can grow into, one that's not so overly powerful it's scary and you almost wrap yourself around the first tree when you pull out, or don't get one that's so underpowered that you just don't want to keep it for very long and it might even irk you about motorcycling or something. Get one you can grow to, and just make sure it's got the features that you can live with for a long time, So think about the braking and things like that, especially if you've got your license already and you're able to go take a test ride and the dealers are going to let you take it for a good long ride. It's just one of those things. Do you want double disc brakes up front, single, or do you want drum in the back? There's several different combinations of braking packages on motorcycles now. Like the Shadow has a drum brake still in the back, and the Rebel does as well. But, those are kind of smaller bikes, and then they have the single disc up front. And, do you mind that stopping power? Do you mind that stopping distance? Are you able to modulate that, Or would you like the more modern systems that are double disc and a little bit safer with ABS that are able to stop the bike even if you're coming to a panic stop and things like that? How do you feel? What makes you more comfortable? Are you worried about locking your rear wheel and sliding around and all that stuff? Are you able to catch that weight as it slides around? Because you're not supposed to release that brake until after you come to a stop if it's the back brake. Front brake, are you able to, if you stab it too hard, are you fast enough at releasing it from the lock so you don't fall over, things like that. So think about the safety of the bike and the equipment that you want to live with for a long time as you're growing into riding and getting better and better and better, so you can keep that first bike for a couple of years, and grow into it and become a great rider with that bike, and then you can move up to the next one and go on and so forth like that. So as a beginning rider, I just recommend really sitting on a lot of bikes, a wide range of different bikes, and enjoying some test drives and stuff like that. Make sure they allow you to ride those things first, so that way you can get used to them and the features that they have. So another thing about it when you're a beginning rider that I always recommend is you have some in your budget for some good protective gear. I happen to like modular helmets. This is an HJC modular, and I actually am wearing an HJC modular right now. This one's just outfitted with the camera stuff and things like that. This one has a Bluetooth module in it. It's a chatterbox, but it's not connected right now. You'll see the little clip for it right there, but that's what this helmet has in it. This one has my filming equipment in it. I just like the modular helmets because whenever you get off, you can talk, and things like that by opening that up, hear a little bit better. They usually have a built-in sunshade in them, which is really nice. But I definitely like the wind noise, the ventilation, everything like that. Another thing is, when you're a beginning rider, I do recommend gloves. Good pair of solid gloves. And you wear these all the time because you wouldn't suspect what road debris can do to your fingers when you're riding. You'd be doing 70 miles an hour, pop with a rock. Doesn't feel any good at all. Another thing I recommend is a good riding jacket. This is my Fly Racing coat. This is probably the best jacket that I've worn. I have a Harley jacket I've worn, a couple of leather jackets and stuff like that, but this one is definitely the warmest one I've got. It does have vents. They are shut right now because of the pending cold, but has two vents at the shoulders, large vent in the back here. These little emblems are retro-reflective, so they have reflective abilities. Also has reflective ability here on the sleeve as well. On the inside, there is CE armor, as you can hear, in the shoulders, the elbows, and also the back plate, and then over here as well. Has plenty of storage in it. Here in Oklahoma, we have plenty of turnpikes, so I keep my pike pass in my inner pocket there. That way I can get on there and not have to worry about stopping and taking gloves off and all that fun stuff. Also has cell phone pockets on the inside, large map pocket, and this is a removable liner, and it has a mirror of those same pockets on the inner liner as well, or the outer shell I should say. So always remember to get some good riding gear. Another thing is get some good boots. These are just Ariat cowboy boots that go above my ankle, as you can see. Get boots that support your ankle, because you'd be surprised the difference between something with great support in the ankle and something without that support. So when you're sitting at a stoplight or something and you have just regular tennis shoes, sometimes they're really slick, and your ankle actually bends a little bit more when you're sitting there holding that weight. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be in good shape, put it that way. It might mean you end up getting hurt. So I recommend good boots these are slip resistant, oil resistant, and all that, and they don't allow me to slip when I'm sitting at a stoplight, and they protect that ankle as well. So when you're beginning to ride, just kind of remember that whenever you're looking at your gear to ride on, because you don't want to just go with normal clothing. You want to have full gear. Another thing that I don't have is my shaps out. I have a pair of leather shaps that I ride with on both bikes here. They protect from road debris, and excuse me, I got one of those frogs in my throat, and it's not letting me talk very well. But anyway, I can wear those chaps, and protects from road debris coming and striking the legs, and also from cold weather as well, and in many cases wet weather. I know they're a little bit open-ended on the front and the back, but if you get some like this coat here, it goes over those. That way they're completely waterproof in that respect. So just look at the gear that you're getting. I also have a pair of rider's pants that I don't have out here right now, probably in the washer or something, but they're armored at the knees and the backside and things like that with Kevlar. Great to have, because when you go on a slide, you don't want to get hurt. So, good abrasion resistant pants, things like that. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to kind of go through and do a lot of things about being the beginning rider. This one is just about choosing the right motorcycle, about choosing your gear, things of that nature. Next one, I'm going to go into some, rider tips and tutorials, how to get going on a bike, how to start your adventure in riding. So I definitely am a big proponent of people getting out there on motorcycles and enjoying time on that. So at any rate, this is the Rabid Hedgehog. If you got any questions, post them down below in the comments. Let me know what you think, and if you have any suggestions, put them down there, and they might be in the next video. Have a good one, guys. Keep the shiny side up. We'll holler at you later.